Yeah.
Design Engineering Night number 2. Woo! Awesome. All right, I'm really excited about that. So first I'll pull my notes out. Yeah, so the difference, I remember, some of you might remember, oh, the thing I'm interested in is like how many people here came to the first Design Engineering Night? Can you raise your hand? Okay, the whole Granola team are there? That's awesome. That's really good. So today, what's different? We also streaming this event. So last time we did recordings of the event, and we posted all the videos. And we're gonna do the same thing this time, but also we're streaming it. So if anybody's watching there, like, hello there, the camera is over there. So yeah, also I want to talk a little bit about like how this event like happened to be. So it's not like just one event. It's like a series of events that we're doing at Granola. And I want to say it's like quite personal thing for me. So I'm really happy that this thing exists as a phenomena because like I remember when I moved to London 3 years ago, I was looking for, maybe that was a stupid thing to do, quite outdated. I was like going to meetup.com and was trying to find something there, but nothing really was happening. And I was like, oh, probably I'm a bit outdated. But also, I went to some like engineering events, but I always felt like I'm not quite there. Like I don't feel like I'm fully included in this crowd because I also like while coding, I also do design. So I was looking for an event where those things kind of merged together, and I haven't found anything. And then I remember at some point we were talking in the team about like if we can do something like that, because one of the co-founders, Sam, he's also like a designer who writes code and actually wrote a lot of code in our own app, like in Granola. So and we chatted with him, and we're like, yeah, let's just make it happen. So this is how event happened to be. So what this event is about and how is it structured? So We have 3 speakers today. Each talk is going to be around 15 minutes. And after each talk, we'll have a short Q&A session where you guys can ask questions. This time I will try to look on questions on YouTube. So if somebody will be posting there, I'll look at that as well. We'll need like a couple of minutes between talks to set things up properly. So we like stream slides and everything. It will require a few minutes. Let me see. Is there anything else I forgot to say? Oh yeah, the important thing. Granola is hiring, and Granola is hiring product engineers and design engineers as well. So if you're interested, let me know, or like find somebody with the Granola sticker on it. It's probably a person working at Granola, and ask them questions. Yeah, I think we're ready to start, and I'll introduce James. James is, while being an amazing person, he's also designer, engineer. So during the day, he is a tech bro, but like when he goes home, he becomes artist and illustrator. And today, maybe he'll share more of this side with us. So let's do a round of applause. Nice.
You can see it on the live stream, but it just cut out briefly. I think that might happen intermittently. Thank you very much to Granola for having me here today. Also doubly so because I'm currently working with Granola as a contractor, helping out with design and engineering. One quick thing, as Tion mentioned, I'm actually not going to be talking about design engineering tonight or even anything tangentially related to it. Unless you can find some links when you're listening, you can tell me about it afterwards. But don't worry, you're in the right place. It's going to be fun. I have a lot of slides, so let's get into it. So before I talk about my artwork, I'll just give you a quick background on my career as a designer and an engineer. I've had lots of different job titles. I had this diagram in my head when I was putting this talk together, just to kind of map out my career in terms of the different balance of design and code I've had. I've never actually been called a design engineer, but somewhere in there is what you'd probably consider design engineering. I also have missed out my misspent youth overriding the MySpace CSS, if anyone else learned how to code doing that. Some quick stuff that I've designed that I'm proud of. It's a bit bleached on this image, but I worked at Incident.io as the first designer. I was a team of one there for quite a while. I designed their status pages product. I think it's really cool that I designed something that has the OpenAI logo on it. I'm really happy. And it's also, this is also, as a product, this has been viewed hundreds of millions of times by end users who are going to status pages to see all the things that are broken. I've shipped a lot of side projects in my spare time as well. This is frets.fyi, which is like an interactive fretboard diagram tool if you're ever like tired of Google imaging like different guitar fretboard scales. But I'm actually tonight, as we mentioned, going to be talking about something else which I've spent probably the same amount of time doing since I was a teenager, as well as hacking on HTML and CSS and everything after that, which is making art. So this is this is the most popular piece of art I've shared. I share my art mostly on Twitter, more so on other platforms nowadays. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about Twitter numbers, but a lot of people have seen this animation. It's gone like, I repost my art because for me, I want people to see my art, and I don't trust algorithms to show my post to most of the people who follow me. So I regularly repost stuff. This has gone viral like about 10 times on Twitter. It's been on Reddit front page and things like that. But this is just some of the stats that I grabbed from Twitter. Anyway, a lot of people have seen my art, which makes me really happy. I've posted and made a lot of art. There's a bunch of other stuff here that's a lot of people have seen on social media. But the thing that like is really important to me is like I make art for me to feel something and for other people to feel something as well. And what is really nice is that people get in touch to write comments like this, where it's not just them saying they think the art looks good. It's like it's kind of, you know, they've connected with it in some way. My personal favourite is this last one, "Damn you, James, you filled my heart with joy." I think that's here's a couple more. Just let these go. I do non-animated stuff as well, occasionally just doing kind of more traditional static illustrations. I don't do commissions a lot, but I have done a few. Honestly, I think involving money in art makes me like it less. I don't like it when I have to do something for someone else. I just like making art for me, but occasionally things come up. You might know some of these YouTubers. If you know Vatu Vidya, he's like Dark Souls, Elden Ring, all that kind of thing. Cool. So one thing that people maybe don't immediately know when they look at my art is that it's 100% digital. I use Blender behind the scenes, which is fun to reveal for people who maybe won't have guessed that. An additionally funner thing is to talk about this piece of software that I use, which my animation workflow depends on this tool. I did try reading the paper that backs it behind. I can't say I made it all the way or understood any of it, but we're going to get into that. We're going to get into that tonight. But before we do, I'm going to go back a bit and talk about how I developed my art style. So I'm going to just talk about one art influence of mine. I love lots of different kinds of art, but I do have a soft spot for illustration. I studied illustration at university, and this is a work by an illustrator called Dave McKean. He's done lots of comics, books, children's books. He's directed a film. And yeah, when I was sort of first starting to take art more seriously as a young adult, his work kind of just engaged me. Like visually, I found it very engaging. What I really liked and was inspired by is the combination of different mediums. So we've got photography, painting, typography, like model making. Like there's lots going on when you really look at these images. I just thought that was really cool. It's just really interesting seeing combinations of different things being used in one piece of art. So to cut a long story short, I kind of pursued that direction in my own art. This is like early stuff from university. I was really into making stuff using cardboard, and then kind of taking photos of the things that I'd made out of cardboard, like printing them out and then working onto the printouts and then scanning them back in and overlaying them and things like that. The thing in the center is an A0 print, so these are some details on the left of like the actual size of it. So yeah, that was fun to make. But you can see, I mean, I don't think it looks great. It's got like, there's a Costa coffee cup in the corner there. I evolved this style over time, started to move in a more illustrative, like visually pleasing direction, and eventually arrived at something over time that I felt was my style. These are some examples of that. Here's another example. There's a kind of, at this point, there's a kind of consistent use of model making, texture, kind of mark making, drawing, all that kind of stuff. Very briefly, like how I was making this, I already mentioned that I was making stuff out of cardboard. So on the left here, there's a model that I made out of cardboard. I painted it, so it's like all painted in white. Took a picture of it, took that into Photoshop. I would isolate the kind of surfaces. So the outline in red is an example of a kind of surface that I would have used the pen tool to define. I did that over the whole model, so every kind of facet. Then what I would do is print out a sheet of all those shapes. I would hand draw pencil texture over the shapes, then I would scan it back in and overlay it back onto the photo. So you can see an example of that in the center bottom right image, where there's like a textured panel that's been overlaid over the photo. And then you can kind of maybe join the dots from that to the image on the right, where I've applied the texture over the whole image. There's obviously post-processing, color, there's layers of hand-drawn elements, typography, and that kind of stuff. So that was my process. To zoom ahead a bit, basically it's time-consuming making stuff out of cardboard, and it limits what you can do. So I thought, I'm going to try Blender and see if I can do stuff with that. It worked out pretty well. I'm going to revisit that and go into more detail about what my current process is like using Blender. But first, I'm going to take a quick detour just to kind of load up some context on what EB Synth is, so that when I talk about how I use it, you'll kind of hopefully understand a bit more about how it's working. So to cut a really long, well, not a really long story, but to like summarize how it works, you give EB Synth a selection of animation frames, so frames that if you put them in sequence, they're going to form a video. That, let's say they're unstyled, and you provide one reference frame which has been styled. So in this case, we've got this circle moving from left to right, and I've given one styled frame with the blue circle and the yellow background. And so my expectation of how this will work is that it's going to give me the animation with the style applied to every single frame. So this is not using AI or machine learning, it's algorithmic. I'll get into a bit of my understanding of how it works. But first to just show, so I was doing this last night to test that it actually works. So these are the frames. So that's a freebie, I already gave it that one. But frames 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's a simple example, but I think that's pretty cool. Like, it's not like it's in a piece of software where it knows what the object is as a layer or position or anything like that. It's kind of detecting the objects in the frames and figuring out how the style needs to be applied across a selection of frames. So I'll just get into this a bit. So I'm not an expert on how this works, but this I think gives at least one level deeper explanation of how it works. So the goal obviously is like figure out like what is in the frames, what objects are in the frames, and how is that changing over time, so that we can apply the same style only from one reference frame over all the others. So under the hood, what's happening is things like edge detection. I've just used the Granola logo as an example here. This is just me in Photoshop doing the find edges filter, but it's basically the same thing, where it's making the image easier to discern as a like collection of shapes. And then this is just an image that I got off the internet, Googling optical flow. But essentially what's happening, as I understand it, is each frame is being divided into smaller pieces. The pieces between each frame are being compared to find the equivalent in the next frame. So comparing the patches in frame 1, each patch, like where is that in frame 2? And then eventually what you have is this kind of sort of plan of movement. If you wanted to go from frame 1 to frame 2, how did the pixels or the patches actually move? So that you're basically what's happening is it's like if you've ever used the warp tool in Photoshop to just kind of drag shapes like around, it's basically similar. The pixels are literally being like dragged across the composition. So yeah, it's figuring out, oh, this collection of blue pixels needs to shift across this much, and then this much, and this much, and so on. Hopefully that makes some kind of sense. Let's go through a few examples just to see how you can push it. So in this one, the circle is getting smaller over time. So let's just wait for the screen to come back on. So we've got frame 1, that, again, we know that one. Frame 2, it did it, it got smaller. It's working so far, all good. Does mess up on the last one, which I wanted to include just to show it's not perfect. I could spend time tweaking this to figure out how to get it to work. There are parameters to set. There's also decisions about the frames you give it. I think if I'd given it more frames, like smaller increments of change, it probably would have been all right. Let's do another slightly interesting one. The circle's going to sort of morph into more of a square shape over time. So does pretty good. Again, last one messes up. Something to point out is it can only deal with information that you've given it, really, in the styled frame. So if you chuck something random into the animation set of animation frames that it doesn't know about, it's not going to do a great job, but it's kind of interesting to see what it does do. So it's recognized that there's a shape there that's different to the one before, and it's tried its best. So, we'll give it that. This is me putting the Granola logo into the earlier frame and also including like a style reference for it. So you'll see that this is a bit different now because it has more information. Like, it's not perfect. Again, if I wanted it to be perfect, I'd have to do a bit more tweaking, but you get the idea. Cool. So with all that said, I'm now going to go through how I currently make art. So I mentioned I use Blender. I use a technique called box modeling. Essentially, everything is like the default cube. If you've ever used Blender, I just like load up another default cube and then like make it shorter or taller or extrude bits of it and things like that. And then eventually I get something like a finished scene. So here at the top left is like the Blender render. So I've got lighting, a bit of color maybe, but there's no kind of texture, there's no special materials. It's just default Blender material. Once I've got the render, I take it into Photoshop. So the top right is kind of a texture layer over the whole thing. Bottom right, I've done some kind of specific hand-drawn stuff, although nowadays I use a graphics tablet and a pencil brush in Photoshop. So it's all digital now. There's no more hand-drawn scanning or anything like that. So it's similar concept, like I'm doing texture that kind of matches the composition of the image. You can see the lines in the bottom left one are kind of feel like they're kind of coming out from the ground in the same direction as the light and that kind of stuff. Obviously adding facial features and things like that. Then bottom right is finished product, so the color's been boosted, contrast, all that kind of thing. So that's like a very quick tour through how I make art these days. I also use the Save for Web Legacy dialog in Photoshop to like dither images to a limited palette where it actually kind of does the calculation on what the dominant colors in the composition are for me. It just gives it kind of an extra cool look to reduce the palette. I hope they never take this away. I might have to build it myself if they do. So yeah, animation. How do I animate my style? It's still quite specific in terms of frames. So, if we were to go back to this, if I want this like bunny's arm to move, well, I spent all that time doing the specific texture around the arm, or if I want the leaves to move and things like that. So that means like it's going to probably be quite high effort if I want to animate that style. So the first thing I tried was this kind of stereoscopic thing where I did kind of essentially multiple versions of the same image where the camera angle was slightly different. They get called wigglegram sometimes, but you get this effect. It slightly kind of gives it a 3D effect. It feels like, it's come to life. I do like this, and I still do share this one. This is another version of the same technique. So that's like, I like these images, but it's quite time intensive still doing the same illustration basically 4 times, going over all the texture and things like that. So I like the YouTube channel 2 Minute Papers, and I think that's where I first heard about EB Synth. So it was kind of in my head as something to mess around with, and it just occurred to me that I could try using it to animate my work. So this is a early experiment with it, where it's not doing a great job. You can see in the top left are the Blender frames. Bottom left is one frame, and I just was like, I'll see what it does with it. It's actually like happening in the video is reversed, which makes it a bit harder to see. But so this is like me spending more time on it and coming up with something more polished. It's not all smeared. The edges are sharp everywhere and things like that. So you can see the 10 frames are what I gave EB Synth for like the animation. So I included the facial details this time. I also kind of split it into 2 sections, and I used 2 style references. So when it hit a zoom level where it wasn't doing a good job anymore, I kind of basically like topped it up with another styled frame. And then the end result is like a lot nicer. And then here's the finished result on the left with the kind of usual like extra stuff added. And then the animation on the right is the same technique. that's got, I think, 60 frames and 6 styled references, and then the rest is being done by EBSynth. Cool, so going back to the start, the leopard, just to recap then, I have something like this in Blender, bunch of frames, no texture, but colors, basic lighting. In this case, I do have a kind of reflection material on the glass. I give it 1 frame, so I did that in Photoshop over one of the renders, just doing a bit more texture, boosting the colors and things like that. It comes out with the thing on the left, so we've now got kind of an animated composition, and then the thing on the right is the final product, where I've added a bunch of extra details like the animated eyes, the ripples, the wave effect in the water. That's all done in After Effects. So yeah, Blender, Photoshop, EBSynth, After Effects. That's how I make my art. Thank you very much for listening.
Have maybe time for a couple of questions. All right, Emery.
How do you find AI with art?
I don't. Yeah, I have opinions on that. I think I don't feel the need to involve it in my process. Like, I'm interested in technology, so I've tried out tools. You know, when Midjourney first came out, kind of mess about with it as a curiosity. It feels completely separate from what I do, so it is kind of like a sort of curiosity to me. I have opinions about it. I think it's problematic.
Kind of warm. They remind me of like Little Big Planet or like Tear Away or that kind of thing. Like, how come that's the kind of thematic universe of it?
Yeah. So the influence I mentioned right at the start, Dave McKean. I mean, I could have used a lot more, but my talk's already a lot of slides, so I kind of just wanted to pick that one inspiration. But his style has the same kind of, there's a lot of warmth. It's kind of cozy, slightly nostalgic kind of children's book style. I guess I'm just kind of drawn to that style. You know, I love children's books, Where the Wild Things Are, things like that. So these things just like come out in your art. I guess you kind of end up making the things that you like. I think for me, I like making these little worlds. It's kind of comforting for me too, to just spend time creating these nice cozy worlds.
All right, well, last one.
Thank you. Great presentation. Out of your flow, so Blender, Photoshop, BBC, and After Effects, which one is the hardest to do, and which one is the most enjoyable in the process of creating?
I think the hardest I would measure by the time it takes, and I think the Photoshop bit is quite time intensive, doing all the texturing, even though I'm doing it on a graphics tablet. I think animation After Effects is really fiddly, because you know, like the eyes and the ripples, that's like loads of little compositions of like flipbook style animations that then have to be layered over things. So Photoshop and After Effects are the most time intensive. The funnest bit is in Blender, because that's when I'm like making a 3D world. And that's just really cool, like making a world. And I get to spend time in that and decide the final view of it that everyone else sees, but I also got to like spend the time creating that. So yeah.
Cool.
Nice.
Thank you, James. his presentation about how screens work, and then at the end, he does this like amazing isometric illustrations. The talk was not about that, but at the end, people were like, "Yeah, cool talk, but like, how do you do those illustrations?" And then he just like jumped on Figma and started showing it. I was like, "Oh, we should do a talk only about illustrations." So that's why we had James. But yeah, now I want to introduce Bruno. So Bruno is the author and creator of a library called Silk. So Silk is like a drawer or like action sheet that works on web, but it works like behaves exactly how it behaves like natively on iOS. And he's going to talk about that. So let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you. So it's okay, right? Yeah. So thanks for the introduction. Thank you for inviting me as well. So yeah, I'm going to talk about Silk and the Silk way. I mean, that's basically a way to say how Silk was, where it came from, how it was created, and what I intend to do with it. So how Silk came to be. So it started about 12 years ago. Basically, I wanted to build apps for the iPhone, for the Mac, but also for Android and for Windows. And I wanted them to have a very smooth UX with very smooth natural animations, swipe-based animations, stuff like that. Basically, what we like in apps, right? And so these are apps like Google Map that we all know, with these bottom sheets that expand, bottom drawers, whatever you want to call them, that you can swipe, pages coming from the right with this parallax effect. So very cool UI, and this one that you all know, I suppose, Airbnb, which is also very nice. So you have layout animations, very nice full height sheets, and yeah, different kind of stuff, pages as well. So these are the UIs I wanted to reproduce, and I thought about apps in general at that time. And so at that time, I knew a bit about web development. So I thought I would start with that because I would need a website to promote my apps anyway. So I thought, all right, I'm going to study web development. And I studied it very thoroughly. I took notes and studied different specs, etc. And quickly I realized, well, the web is pretty powerful, actually. And it could be used, I believe, to create UIs close to what I want. It had, back then, it was 12 years ago, 10 years ago, something like that. It had already CSS transitions and animations, so you could create very smooth animations that run on the GPU, so hardware accelerated, with very high frame rates. You had media queries that allowed you to adapt your layout to the viewpoint of small devices, like a smartphone. You had touch events, so it was very powerful already. And the reason is Safari actually made its, Apple, when they introduced the iPhone, they intended Safari to be the way apps were shipped on the iPhone initially. And so they added a lot of these stuff, and it was quite powerful. So I thought, why not use the web to build apps? And the web has many advantages. You code once, and you use it everywhere. You can publish updates instantly. You don't have to go through an app review. And it is based on standards, which is very cool, because many companies, many people can contribute to these standards and create something very well thought out. But it was missing a few things. So layout animations, basically going from one layout to another. So for instance, expanding a picture to full screen. It was not very, I mean, it wasn't built into the web, and back then it was difficult to do. But in 2015, Paul Lewis, who worked at Google, I think, introduced the flip technique, which is a way to flip, basically to go from one layout to another by calculating the original position and the final position and inverting them with the translate. And then it was improved by the Motion library, and now we even have the View Transitions API baked into the web. So that was a problem, but it wasn't a big problem from the start, and so that wasn't a blocker. Then we have spring-based animations, which are very cool. They are basically based on natural spring physics. So that's how basically on iOS you have very natural feeling animations with sometimes a bit of an overshoot. And so for these, it's not baked into the web as well, but you can get close to that with generated keyframes. So that's been possible since we had basically CSS animations. And now we have the linear CSS functions, which you can use to do that as well. And the last one, which was missing, was gesture-driven animations. So basically, animations that are driven by a touch, for instance, a touch move. And so these, you could do them with basically based on JS. So on each frame, you would would change the position of the element with the translate. But the thing is, when you run an animation based on JS, based on request animation frame especially, the performance are not great. Quite often, it's not smooth. It's very janky. Because it's on the main frame, it can be interrupted by blocking by like JS that's being run. And also on iOS, it's capped by Apple. Apple is capping it at 60 FPS and even 30 FPS on low power mode. So swipe animations were a bit problematical. And but in around 2015, a new spec was introduced. It's called Scroll Snap. And so that's basically a way to it's scrolling, but with a snapping. So basically, if you have items inside of a scroller, you can have them snap as you scroll, and they snap in a very smooth way. And so when I heard about that spec, I had hoped that it could be used for any kind of swipe animations, because basically, if you can have an item being snapped, you can use it for different things. And so it became stable around 2018, 2019. And I tried it right away when it came out, and I was a bit disappointed because it was the animation curve was different between browsers, and it was usually too slow to be used for anything else than carousels. So for carousels, it's very good, and it's already used across the web. For anything else, like tabs, like bottom sheets, pages, whatever, it's not great, unfortunately. At least that was my first conclusion. But then I thought a lot about it, because basically I obsessed about being able to recreate these animations, these UX on the web. And so I kept thinking about ways of doing it. And after a lot of experimentations, about 4.5 years ago, I found a way to use Scroll Snap, and that basically became Silk. A few more things. So there were missing things for animations, but there are also other problems when it comes to building great native-like UI on the web. So maybe you know about some of these body scroll issues in Safari. So this is basically, it's very hard to prevent the page from scrolling in Safari. So if you display a bottom sheet, a page, a sidebar, whatever, it's complicated to prevent the page below to be scrolled. And that's been the case for about 10 years, and Apple does not care. On-screen keyboard issues. So actually, I'm going to show something about that. So it's problem with the on-screen keyboard. I'm going to talk about it more precisely. Rendering problems. So flashes, partially represented layers. So basically rendering issues when you animate stuff, especially large layers. And poor animations performance, that's a bit linked to that. So this is an example of the body scrolling issues. So this is a French website, whatever. And I display a sidebar, and below, I try to scroll inside of it. And what happens is that when I arrive at the bottom, I actually end up scrolling the page below. And so you see the Safari UI being expanded and collapsed. And the experience is terrible because basically the user wants to scroll inside the model, and it ends up scrolling the page. And the other quite problematic thing is on-screen keyboards. So basically in Safari, but also now on Chrome on Android, when you try to display the keyboard, what happens is that the entire viewport is being shifted up. And so you lose the top elements that are fixed at the top of the screen, and you end up with a gigantic space below the text input. That's not very convenient. So yeah, one does not simply make a modal dialog in iOS Safari. It's just very complicated because of quirks of the browser, bugs, and missing features as well. And my goal was not to just make, with Silk, my goal was not to make just cool demos that looks great in video but don't work great in the browser. I wanted to use it in real apps, and so I had to find ways around these issues. And so we come to Silk design principles. Basically, I had to work, so the way Silk is designed, is implemented, is with the constraints and the strengths of the web. So basically, I had to find ways to work around the limitations in terms of swipe animations. So I rely on scroll snap for that. And I use the Web Animation API, which is also a very performant way to animate things. Details matter because, for instance, the body scrolling problem, the on-screen keyboard problems may appear to be details, but they end up destroying the experience. So details are very important. And behind Silk, the idea is to do whatever it takes to bring the experience I want. So basically, Silk is a nice package, and under the hood, there are a lot of complicated stuff being done. But I do it for you, and you don't have to do it yourself. So what is Silk? I'm going to go quickly because I'm a bit long. So Silk is a web library available for React at the moment. So it allows you to build basically animated overlays that you can swipe. At its core, it's low level, so it's on style. You can do anything with it. And it's fully accessible, so keyboard navigation is included. It deals with everything you need. So these are some examples. Basically, the library itself is low level, but I have 16 examples on the website that show what you can do with it, and you can just take the code and copy paste it in your code base, change what you want, and get going. So you can do bottom sheets, sidebars, pages, toast, full height sheets, or whatever. It works across browser and on desktop as well. And that's what is pretty new about Silk as well, because usually swipe, animation, swipeable overlays work on mobile. Libraries that deal with that make it work on mobile, but not on desktop. So Silk, because it relies on scroll snap, and scroll snap works everywhere, well, it works also on desktop with a trackpad, for instance, or even with a mouse. So that's pretty cool. Animations are mostly GPU accelerated, not all, but mostly. So you can do animations based on the travel, like that. So here it's a parallax page. We don't see very well, but the page below is animated as it travels. So you can animate anything based on the travel. It supports detents, so basically you can have the sheets rest at different points, and it supports stacks, so you can stack sheets and have a cool stacking effect like that. It handles mobile keyboard very well, so you don't see the viewport going wherever. It basically moves inside of scroll container. It will move the content, add space at the bottom so that the content remains accessible all the time. Body scrolling is also very well supported. Normally, it should work all the time. If you manage to break it, tell me, because it should not. Can be modal or not. So here it's a toast, and you can interact with the page. So in this case, it's not modal. It has Spring baked in, Spring animations. So you can customize the spring animations. And many subtle features that that improves the experience. So here, I don't know if you've seen it. Basically, what happens is that the status bar at the top is being blended with the background, with the backdrop. Sorry. So it makes it look like the backdrop is extending on top of the entire page. So it's highly declarative. It has a few components that you can mix together to create the entire experience. It's very easy to use. And now, to finish, I want to make a deep dive into the most complex example I have, which is the sheet with depth. So this is a typical animation on iOS, a very nice animation where you have the background which is being pushed away, and a full height sheet that comes at the top, on top of it. So I wanted to recreate that on the web. So the way to do that is to use, basically, for starters, I wanted to stack several sheets on top of each other. So I used the sheet stack for that, which is basically you wrap the sheet inside of the sheet stack component, and it gives you a stacking animation prop, which you can use to animate as a new sheet is added on top of the stack. So here, the stacking animation is the first sheet is displayed, a new sheet is added on top, and it pushes the sheet below. So that's the first step. But here we don't have the depth effect, right? We don't have the background being pushed. So let's try to do that. So to do that, we can try to scale the background, right? So here I scale the background and I add a black div below it. But it's not quite what we want, right? Several problems here. So first of all, it doesn't look like it's a card below, right? It's a whole column, and we don't want that. We want it to look like some kind of a card which matches the size of the screen. And different issues. We also have oops, sorry, where am I? So the status bar is also remaining white, and we have issues with the top bar as well. So then what we want to do, we can do is use a feature that is included in Silk, which is the clip boundary. So the clip boundary allows you to, it's a special CSS property that is added to the stacking animation prop and also stacking animation prop. And so here we use it on a sheet stack outlet which wraps the background. So this area is wrapped inside a sheet stack outlet, and we use the clip boundary on it. And what it does is this. So here we don't have a full column. Now it's clipped at the side of the screen, but it's not quite correct because it's not animated in the right position. So what we want is actually this. So here it stays properly, and what I used here is another special CSS property that I added in Silk, which is the clip transform origin, which allows you to basically move the transform origin of the element, which is actually the whole page. So it's like that, and we want it to be the transform origin to be positioned at the inside of the viewport. So the clip transform origin allows you to move it relatively to the clipping. And then we can add some clip border radius like that, and it looks better. But we still have a few problems. The top bar, which we have here, goes away. If you look at it, oops, sorry. Here, it disappears. Right, that's this one. It disappears still. And so here, what we want to do is keep the top bar. So here it stays. So what I did here is the problem is when you translate an element and you have a fixed element inside of them, well, the fixed element normally are positioned viewports. But if they are inside an element that is being transformed, then the position fixed is relative to that element, not the viewport anymore. So in this case, it becomes relative to the page content, so the top bar jumps at the top. And so Silk includes a cool feature that allows to just reposition the position fixed element in that case. So it's called fixed, it's a component. So you use, here I just use that component and automatically the top bar remains in place. So that's pretty cool. Now the last thing is the status bar, which is, which normally here remains, white, and we don't want that. We want it to gently blend in with the black background. So to do that, we can use the team color team overlay. Wait, I don't remember what it's called. Team color dimming overlay feature in Silk, which allows to basically change the color of the team color, which is used by Safari for the status bar. And so here, now it properly goes to black, but not in synchronization with the black element. So to do that, we want to animate as well the opacity of the black element. We make it go from 0 opacity to 1 opacity, and we end up with this. So that's basically what we want now. So pretty complicated example. Sorry. But I thought that was quite interesting to see that you can produce very UX that are very UI and UX that are very close to native on the web, and Silk helps you do that with a lot of small features that are baked into it. So that's about it. Now, just unleash the web.
Question, yes. I'll be repeating the question to the microphone. No, oh, is it on me? Yeah. So that people on the live stream can hear it as well. Yep.
Yeah, nice. Thank you for the talk. First of all, sick. Like, so cool. I'm interested to know how you test on lower devices, kind of lower performance devices, and how does it what's your QA like? Do you test on lower in spec ones, and obviously there are GPU and things like that.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, let me repeat the question first. So the question is how do you test performance, right? So,
on lower end devices especially. Yeah, well, the best way to test is to own a device yourself. So basically I have a low-end Android device and I test across Android, iPhone. I have different old iPhones as well. I test on Mac and I test on Windows. And when it comes to interactions and gesture-based animation performance, the best, honestly, I think the only way to test properly is to test it in real life. You can't automate it because you won't see the missing frames, you won't see the small problems. So yeah, I use real devices and I test a lot manually. Yeah.
Cool. Emery?
Did any of the new iOS 26 Safari stuff break stuff here, or is it
Bruno, can you repeat what people were saying?
So the question is, does iOS 26, the change of the UI, breaks some stuff in Silk? So it does change the way fixed element behave. It just changed the way the viewport behave. Basically, the new viewport is not the entire screen. So they render the entire page on the entire screen, but the viewport itself is not the entire screen. So if you have position fixed element and you animate them out of that of the viewport, well, they put a full color which kind of matches the color of the animated elements, or they don't put any color, depending on the setup. Sometimes it doesn't put any color, so then the element just disappears out of the viewport, so it's pretty bad. So it does change things. Now I already have workarounds for what they do, but it's still workaround. Unfortunately, it's not a great experience because they don't support what they themselves have added to the web, which is expanding the viewport to the full screen like they do in standalone mode, and using safe area variables. They don't support that in Safari for some reasons. So it does degrade kind of the experience. Now I'm gonna improve it anyway. I'm gonna work with it, but it could be better. So.
Cool. I think that's it. That's it with questions for now. I think Bruno is still here, so you can catch him and ask questions later. I think now, yeah, let's give a round of applause to Bruno. Samuel, do you come to London a lot? Like,
This is the fourth time this year.
all right. So let me introduce you to our last speaker today. Is Samuel, who is a design engineer from Raycast, and he's going to talk about his side project that he was working on. So yeah, let's applaud to Samuel.
Thank you for the intro, and yeah, thanks for Granola for inviting me here today. I'm Samuel. I'm a design engineer from Sweden. I work at Raycast, but today I'm going to talk about my side project. And this is a very personal story about how a small side project became one of the most important things that I have ever built. I am really into endurance sports, running, skiing, kayaking, cycling, whatever brings me outside brings me a lot of joy. It's also the time where I solve a lot of tricky design problems and engineering problems. I saw this tweet from fellow designer William Bout the other day, his favorite design tools are his running shoes and his road bike. And I think a lot of people can relate to things like this. But if you treat your running shoes, your bike as your design tool, or because you're a high performer, you're chasing the next running race or a new running distance or something, it becomes easy to do too much. You might injure yourself, you might do too much. So I was looking for a way to plan it all. I would grab a piece of paper and I would scribble down like a week. This is in Swedish from an old notebook I found. But basically like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And I would scribble down like Monday, strength training, stretching, Tuesday, biking, Wednesday, running. And while this works quite okay, it's super fast, it's quite limited, as I'm sure you can understand. Whilst I was planning, like the core reason I wanted to plan was because I wanted to see the visual impact of my training, both whilst I was planning and whilst after my training. And this is very static. I also want to know, like, did I complete the workout or not? So I would put a small check mark on the workout, but I would just forget to do it for some workouts, and then I would just lose this paper and start a new one. So I started building what I now call Shape, and this is a calendar for your workouts. So the goal of Shape is to take the simplicity of planning stuff with a piece of paper, but making it a product in its own and a lot of nice goodies on top of it. Here's a quick glance of how it looks like on web and iOS. So today I wanted to bring you along to see the process of designing and building Shape. So the idea is quite easy. I wanted a way to plan workouts, and the bar to beat is pen and paper. If it's slower than pen and paper, you're most likely not going to use it. I wanted a way to visualize the training load, both as I was planning and after I completed my workouts. And I wanted it to be automated. I don't wanted to go back and check off stuff off the list or manually input the distance I ran and things like that. And so I started prototyping. And this is the first prototype I built a long time ago. And so I would build this weekly view, and I would start with the workout creation. That was a core flow to get right. And so I would have these 4 different inputs. One for selecting the type of workout you want to do, the duration, the distance, and then I put a bunch of nice interactions on top of this. But the problem is, as a design engineer, these things are super fun to build. And Design Twitter loves this as well. But like if you think of it, it is 4 different inputs you need to enter. And so I didn't use it. I built this, but I never used it because it was just way too complex. The only reason this feels good is because it's pretty with micro interactions and transitions. And this hold to complete interaction, like it felt really good to do this holding to complete. But like, why add this threshold to complete something when I can just undo it later? A good example instead is in Resend, I used it to send marketing emails. And so when you want to send an email to your audience, they have this really nice slide to send interaction. And this adds a lot of friction, but it's a good kind of friction because there's no undoing sending an email to all of your subscribers. Undoing a completed workout, though, it's just a one-click effort. And so I went back to the drawing board. And around this time is also when AI kind of started to explode quite a bit. And about a year ago, OpenAI introduced structured outputs. And if you're unfamiliar with this, it basically allows us to tell the LLM how we want the response to look like and be structured instead of free-form text, so we get JSON data back. And I realized with this, I could bring down my 4 inputs to just 1 input. So I went back to building, and it was beautiful. 1 input, and AI could give me back the response I needed. And suddenly, this was faster than doing it on a piece of paper. So it passed the test. So this is how it works. Here I'm using the Vercel AI SDK in the snippet here on the right, and I'm calling the generate object function. And this is the most basic prompt to do something like this. So generate a workout for what the user wants, so the description, and then some examples of how to name workouts. So we want a short and easy title that is not too long, and we don't want to include a lot of metrics in the title itself because we can show that in the UI separately because we get that back from the data. And then the magic is basically we pass the schema. And so the schema describes exactly what we want to get back from the AI. So we call the LLM and we get your response back. So great, the most basic use case works. And if this output is not what you wanted, you could easily append recovery run 5K and you would get a different result. And there's no like jumping around between different input elements or drop downs and stuff like that. But there was one thing I couldn't stop thinking about, and that's structured workouts. So imagine you're doing some running intervals. For example, you might have a warm-up, then you might have a set of repeats, like 5 times 200 running with some recovery in between, and then maybe a cool down. And so I realized this was also the perfect use case for this. Traditionally, you would do something like this in a UI that looks something like this. And there's endless clicks and menus and inputs, and it's a whole lot of work. So what people usually do in this case is they spend a lot of time upfront building the library of workouts, and they kind of drag and drop once everything is done. But who has time for that? So I dug into the format of how others do this, like Garmin and Apple Health, and I created a new schema. So every workout can now have a single of optional steps. At the top, each step can have a step type, and this can be basically like a warm-up, an interval, a recovery, a work set. Then each step also has an end condition. This can be something like a distance base, run 2 kilometers, or it can be time-based, like bike for 50 minutes. Each step can also have an optional target. So this can be, you should do this set at 50% of your FTP or in your zone 5 heart rate or something like that. So we apply this new schema to the LLM, and we include some more instructions for the LLM how they should use this schema, because we don't want the schema for everything. If you just type 5K run, you're probably not interested in a structured workout. You just want to do a basic 5K run. So let's go back and try this again. So here I'm doing a 5-minute warm-up, 5 times 400 with 60 seconds of rest, and then a cool down. And the AI spits back a complete structured workout in all of the steps. And to me, this is such a huge time saver. And it just feels magical. But the best part about this is that once we have the structured steps, we can sync all of this to your running watch. And so if you have the Shape app installed on your phone, it can sync to your watch. And when you open the Workouts app on your Apple Watch, your workout is there. And the watch will guide you through the workout. And then when you complete your workout, it'll sync back to Shape and mark your workout as completed. So this is great. But to do this, we need connections. And there's a lot of fitness devices out there, and Shape supports Strava, Wahoo, and Apple Health currently. Most devices syncs with either Strava or Apple Health, but I'm building more connections, so that will be coming soon. And these connections are also core to the whole experience of using Shape. So not only to sync structured workouts to your watch and then back, but also to feed LLM so we have good context for when we're creating workouts. Planning with AI is only magical if these things are true. We want a good response, and we also need a response to be fast. we don't have time to sit around and wait for the response, to think for 5 minutes. So here I'm feeding the workouts that I've synced to the LLM, and this gives the LLM much, much better context to create a good workout for you. I do some smart filtering here as well. I can't just send all of your workouts to the LLM. We need to only send the relevant workouts. So in this case, if you're creating a workout for tomorrow, I might include the last 7 days of history of your completed workouts, and I might include next 7 days of planned workouts. So the LLM has better context of what you might want to do on that day. But doing this, it makes the prompt quite big, especially when you have a big structured schema as well. And so to do this and for it to work well, we need a model that is both fast and intelligent enough to handle all of this context. And we've all seen variants of this question, right? What's bigger, 9.9 or 9.11? And unfortunately, the smaller and fastest models, they're not good at math, which sucks to me because planning workouts is a lot of math. It's a lot of kilometers per hour or summing your total distance for a week. So you might look at some benchmarks. This is from artificialanalysis.ai, and it's a graph graphing intelligence versus output speed for leading models. And so it's a bit hard to see on this screen, but the upper right quadrant is basically where you want to be. The model is quick enough and it's also smart enough for what we want to do. And when you look at this, you might see and think that Gemini 2.5 Flash probably hits the sweet spot here. But I found the provider to make a huge difference. So if you're an eagle-eyed listener of this talk, you might have seen that I'm using Llama 4 Maverick. And if you look at it on this graph, it doesn't look particularly interesting, somewhere in the middle. But you gotta take into consideration the provider you're using. And there's one provider that really stands out here. So let me add Cerebras to this graph. And now instead of having an output per tokens per second around 300, the tokens per second is around 3,000, which is a huge difference. It's not even a fair comparison. Unfortunately, GPT OSS doesn't support strict structured outputs, which I'm using. So I'm using Llama 4. But luckily, I found Llama 4 to be smart enough and provide a good trade-off between speed and intelligence for what I'm doing. So we now have this nice flow where your previous workouts are fed into the recommendations when you create new workouts. This will create your structured workouts, sync them to your watch, sync them back with your connection, complete your planned workout and shape, and then fed into the next time you're planning your workouts. All is good. Then last autumn, this is where the story gets personal. I made a huge mistake. I had a long running cold for a couple of weeks, and I was signed up to race Stockholm Half Marathon. It was a beautiful sunny day, race was sold out, and I was feeling okay, so I decided to start the race. And from the start, I knew that I wasn't in my best form, and I felt off the start, heart rate was higher than normal. But if you ever ran a race, you know how hard it is to quit. Everyone's cheering, there's good vibes. So I finished the race anyways. And then it hit me hard. Severe pneumonia. And if there's any doctors in here, yes, this is made with AI. I didn't get my actual scans back, so. And this was so ironic because I had built this app to prevent overtraining, and what I did was basically overtrain myself into the hospital. And this has been by far the most challenging recovery I've ever been through. But it also became the ultimate test for shape. So let me give you a live demo to see how I progressed using shape. see. Lost my cursor. Somewhere behind this window. There we go. So this is Shape Calendar. And basically, it looks like a calendar you're familiar with, but it also has summaries of your weekly distance on the right-hand sidebar. And you'll notice that it has this activity graph up top. And each bar in this graph is basically a week worth of training. The green bars represents workouts that you've completed. The gray bars, you can see some over here, are planned workouts, and the red ones are missed workouts. And this way you can quickly get a really good overview over your training over time. This shows the last year of my training, and seeing it in a graph like this is super important because consistency in training, I guess in most stuff in life, is one of the most important keys to success. And so I've scrolled back here to September 2024. And here's my race I did. You'll notice my calendar is very empty after this. And so for a lot of weeks, it was hard to do anything. I do a couple of bike rides with my son to school, but basically it was really hard to keep up. Fast forward to around Christmas. I had a ski trip planned, and as you know already, I love skiing. And so I was feeling all right at this point. And so what did I do? I did a massive 9 hours of skiing in 3 days. Really smart. Obviously, my body did not respond very well to this. So you can see I missed all of the rest of the days of skiing. So from this point, I took my planning really seriously. And I would start with just basic hikes. 17-minute lunge hike, 9-minute lunge hike, 18 minutes. And at this point, like, I was out of breath from doing 18 minutes of hiking for lunch, which is terrible for someone who's used to running half marathons and being active all day. And so I would progressively increase this, and I would use Shape to make sure that I wasn't overdoing it. Here you can see I started to introduce running and walking, progressively increasing this week over week. Then fast forward, spring, and if you're a skier, you might know that spring is the absolute best time for skiing. And so I repeated the same mistake again. Great. I did a massive 17 hours of skiing in 3 days. And so, you know, I have this tool and I know all of the background of how to train, yet you still do stupid stuff like this. So fast forward, I had to restart all of my running and walking again from scratch. And let's go back to today. I'm a few weeks into my mixed interval running, and I'm feeling better than I've been doing for the last 12 months. And looking back on all of this, I built this product because I wanted to build a fun side project for all my training. But it turned out to be this key component for me to recover from this illness. And so for all of the design engineers in this room, if you're thinking of starting a side project, just go and build it because you never know how important it might become for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Samuel. I have a question myself, actually. Is there a raycast integration with the shape?
Not yet.
Really? Wow.
I do have a integration here showing my user count. So there's something.
Nice. All right. Do we have any questions in the audience? Yes, please.
Thank you. Great presentation. I actually building a little bit something like that for myself. I would use this. I will definitely check it out. My question is on the visual graph part. So how does that relate? How do you calculate it? Is it like a total hours of the day or workloads?
Yes.
Is that like visual cues of how to measure your workloads?
Perfect. So this can be a lengthy answer. So right now, this is the duration. I'm just showing the amount of hours that you're training. And this is generally a pretty good metric to track overall. And it works for, you do a strength training workout, you have a duration, you do a running, you have a duration. You can also choose to use a distance, or the third metric is load. And my graph of load is a bit broken because I've tested this so much. I'm clearing my workout data and all of that. But load is basically an industry standard metric to say how hard a workout is. So you could do 1 hour of running at a leisure pace or 1 hour of running at a race pace, and the load on your body will be completely different, obviously. And so this load, you can calculate it depending on which devices you're using. The most accurate one, if you're cycling, you have a power meter, then you can accurately get the load based on your FTP and the normalized power during your workouts. The second one is if you're using a heart rate monitor, then you can calculate the load based on your heart rate, and there's a formula for this, which is based on your resting heart rate, your threshold heart rate, which is roughly 85% of your max heart rate. And then the least accurate is just an estimated heart rate based on your relative effort. So this is why since last autumn, when Apple released training load for their Apple Watches, they added this option to rate the perceived effort of the workouts. That's why they have something like this. And this is also what Shape uses when you plan a workout. So I feed the LLM this is the general guideline for how to calculate an estimated load. And then it gives you back that load.
Cool. Yep, question over there.
Any thoughts on using that kind of like load data you get back from like workouts to then help plan the next workout? So like if I worked all out, or like I was at like 90% of my heart rate max, like you know, be like, oh, actually maybe you could do something a little bit lighter to compensate for that.
Yeah, of course. So right now, like all of that data is fed back into the LLM, but at this point, the product is more tailored to the self-coached athlete that knows like, okay, I want to do this specific workout. So naturally, the next step would be to actually make the AI suggest the next workout for you. And so you can actually do this right now. My computer died. So like it can suggest it based on my previous workouts, but it's not super optimized for it just yet.
Is it, I would love to try it out, but sometimes I go on runs and I don't plan it as I go on run. And the problem is that Strava does like, oh, since you're running, let's track that. So does Shape do that way? Like you don't need to actively start it and it just picks up like, oh, you're very active right now. Let's track what you're doing.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? I didn't quite hear.
Okay, so what I'm saying is like, for example now, I'm more of a sporadic athlete compared to a structured one. So instead of going on Strava, start workout, I just like go on and run.
Alright.
And then I realized like, oh, I've run 10K. I didn't track it. I can't flex it anymore.
Yeah.
So the question now is it possible that Shape just realize that, oh, you're very active, let's track that. Is that possible?
It's a tricky problem to solve because shape is not the device itself, so it depends on the watch. But I see you have an Apple Watch, and I know they have this feature where if you go on a walk and they detect your heart rate is a bit higher, they suggest that you might be going on a run. Do you want to start this?
Yeah.
And I think it also backtracks from when you started.
Yeah.
So you would be able to get all of the context in there.
But that's the Apple Watch. That's the Apple Health. It's not extra, but you can't share anything with Apple.
So after you've done your workout, if you have the Shape app and your health is connected, it will sync back to Shape. You don't have to plan the workout in Shape. You might just want to see, track your training load over time. So you don't have to track it for it to show up here. I do some smart matching. So for example, if you planned a run for tomorrow and then you go for a run tomorrow, it smartly matches that, okay, this is a run, it's on the same date, it's within a reasonable amount of distance to what you planned. And so it matches that up.
Cool. One more question. Yep.
I think this is an amazing calendar view, and I would expect that you've given a lot of thought to like calendars. I appreciate how tall everything is because you can actually see like what's inside of each day, which I find problematic in a lot of calendars. Like, what calendar app do you use? Like, have you tried a bunch? Like, have you learned a lot trying to just recreate this sort of month view? And, like, are there any standouts from like what you learned?
Yeah, obviously I've tried a lot of calendars, and calendars is a crowded space as well. I use Cron, or Notion Calendar as it's called now, personally. And I think that's where I got some of the inspiration, from the sidebar where you can open your workout on the sidebar. And yeah, just building a calendar is a feat in itself. There's a lot of work going into it. Just getting everything working, like infinite scrolling in all of the directions and everything. So there's a lot of work just to make a nice looking calendar.
Nice. All right. Thank you so much. All right, so we'll be wrapping up our talks, but we are not wrapping up the event. So I encourage you all to stay around and mingle and talk to each other, because there are a lot of cool, like really, really cool people in that room. Also, I want to say special thanks to our speakers again, because like they came from different places. Like Bruno came from France, Samuel came from Sweden, and James came all the way from the floor above. So let's give them a round of applause again. Yeah, so I think we have like around an hour to just be around, have beer, and just talk to each other. So yeah, please use that opportunity. And also I want to say that, again, I'm really, really happy that we're able to gather in that room and yeah, just be in one space, because for me, most of these people were like distributed somewhere in social media, like on Twitter or somewhere else, and like just seeing faces like brings me a lot of joy. All right, thank you guys.